Fill her up.
You're listening to the Gas Digital Network.
Hey guys, today's show is brought to you by Stamps.com, our longtime sponsor. Great service, Stamps.com. Everybody here at Gas Digital uses them. I don't know why anybody wouldn't. I don't know why you wouldn't just be saving yourself time, making your life more convenient. What can you do at Stamps.com? Well, pretty much anything you can do at the post office. You can buy and print official U.S. postage for any letter, any package, any class of mail using your own computer and printer, and then the mail carrier picks it up. No trips to the post office required. It couldn't be easier. You do it right from your computer. It's available any time of day or night, and there's no sitting in traffic on your way somewhere, no working on somebody else's hours. So this is really a no-brainer. As I mentioned, we all use Stamps.com here at Gas Digital, and the holidays are coming up, which is pretty much the busiest time of the year for people mailing things and receiving mail. So this is, again, just a great service. I think you should all check it out. And for my listeners right now, you can enjoy the Stamps.com service with a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus postage and a digital scale without a long-term commitment. So all you got to do is go to Stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and type in problem. So once again, that's Stamps.com. You click on the microphone at the top of the homepage and type in problem. You get that 4-week trial plus postage and a digital scale with no long-term commitments. Like I said, this is a no-brainer. Go to Stamps.com today.
You're listening to Part of the Problem on the Gas Digital Network.
How can you be the freest country in the world when you lock more of your own people in cages than any other country in the world? The lesson of 9/11 should have been to never fund another young rebel group in this part of the world again. America started as the smallest government in history, and it's become the biggest government in world history. At the end of the day, it's all about freedom.
Here's your host, Dave Smith.
Hey, what's going on? What's going on, everybody? Hope you're doing well. We getting any volume there? Yeah? Coming through? Okay, good to know. I sound a little low in my headphones. I got no snare in my headphones. Yo, where my mic at? What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. Does not sound right to me.
Yeah, I'm not. Oh, maybe I'm a little on. There we go. Now I'm hearing it.
Now you are?
Oh, I hear you too.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's something going on with my headphone jack. I don't know.
Maybe try those headphones.
Yeah, maybe I'll try these. Well, anyway, thanks for listening, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. I am, of course, Dave Smith, joined as always by Robbie the Fire Bernstein. Yeah, now I sound good.
Boom.
It was those headphones. It's been a problem with these, with this headphone jack over here. All right, guys. Well, a little bit of a weird start, but what are you going to do? Life happens. How are you, Robbie?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Very good. Very good. I bought a new TV today for my bedroom on Cyber Monday. I've never bought anything on Cyber Monday before, and better. It's better than buying on other days.
Is that the way that works?
Cheaper.
Yeah.
Evidently, this has been the thing that people are into. It's cheaper and substantially cheaper.
Like how much would you say you saved?
I'd say 40%.
Oh, not bad.
Pretty good.
I've gone the other way with my shopping because I get a little too obsessive with, I'm a Jew. I got to find the coupon. I got to find the best rate.
Yeah, you would love this.
Yeah. No, my new
It's
thing
got Jew written all over it.
My new thing is I just buy it when I absolutely need it, and then I don't give a shit if I had to overpay.
I'm terrible. I'm everything that is the opposite of the Jewish stereotype to a fault. Like I don't care at all about that. Like
I'm dumb.
I tip extra heavy. I never pinch pennies to the point that it's like, you know, like my brain, maybe this is bad. Maybe I have a high time preference, but I can never, like if whenever it'll be a thing. I mean, I'm a little bit better now. My wife's gotten me a little bit better, but it would be like, I would just buy coffee at a coffee shop every day. And she'd be like, you know, if you just made your coffee at home, you'd save in the year like $1,000.
And if you just shut your stupid fucking mouth,
that's right.
I could still just enjoy coffee.
Yeah, it's like, wow, isn't it amazing how hypotheticals work?
My entire income goes to energy drinks and just it's like all those little expenses.
But I really do just go in my mind, it's like, yeah, but it's only $3. And he's like, yeah, but you spend $3 twice a day, every single day for the year, and that's a vacation or something. You're like, no, it's $3.
Yeah, but who would ever actually take that vacation?
Yeah.
You know,
I'm not taking that vacation.
This is not a good thing, but I'm so used to being broke from some earlier years of just doing comedy that if I'm just not broke, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not broke.
Yeah,
like I can live broke, so I'll just like if I have it, fuck it, I'll just spend that. I don't care.
Well, that's always kind of my justification to Lauren is that I'm like, well, look, I make way more money this year than I did last year.
Yeah.
So all I got to do is make way more money next year than I do this year, and then we're fine.
Really, just relying on magic.
Yeah. Well, it's not magic. I mean, my income has been fucking going up, so just got to keep that trajectory going. Hopefully, there's not a bubble building in the Dave Smith career.
Or a kid on the way.
Oh yeah. Do they cost money?
I think
I haven't
so.
thought this thing through. Anyway, I will say I enjoyed buying a TV. I needed a new TV for my bedroom, and I have like a TV in there, but it's like a kind of whatever. It's just a little bit older, and I don't like the TV that much. And I have a real nice TV in my living room, but it doesn't really matter because it's just me and my wife there. It's like whatever, we really watch in the living room and then kind of go to bed. But now that there's a baby coming, if one of us is going to, might be in the other room, one of us might want to lie down, watch TV. So it was like, okay, it's worth doing. And then, and she was like, oh, well, perfect. We'll do it on Cyber Monday. And I was like, oh, let's just buy it now. But then I will say, once we did it on Cyber Monday, I was like, oh yeah, no, that was a really, really good call. That was a good move. So I like Cyber Monday. Seems like a good capitalist holiday to me. Not a holiday created by the state, but a holiday created by business. I appreciate that. I must say, and maybe this really is where nothing makes me feel like more of a Christian conservative than this.
Okay.
But do you see, I was watching a couple of the videos of Black Friday and the
riots.
The riots. It is insane, man. Like it's hard to watch that. I was watching a couple that were at like different Walmarts, and it almost makes you feel like God should probably wipe all of us out.
You're just so desperate for shit.
Like
You just need stuff
just
so badly.
How empty and like just empty consumerism with no sense of morals, like that who would even want to do this?
I think it must become part of the thrill of the game. Like you
It
show up
must.
just excited for like a little savings, but then everyone's really excited. Everyone starts getting more and more amped up.
I can't
Next thing you know, you're
understand.
punching someone in the face for a TV. Like
I can't understand what, but I'm talking about you look at it and there are like 95-pound women in the middle of a stampede.
but they can throw an elbow.
I mean, I hope so. I mean, a lot of people do, not a lot, but like people die in those things and people get injured and shit like that. But it's like to just see this, I don't know, there's something about it where
It's gross.
you see and you see this moment where they open the gates and people just flood in, and at first they're trying to keep it orderly, but then as soon as a few people flood, people just start jumping the gates on the side and pulling in and pushing people, and it's just it's hard to not look at it and really be like, man, there's some real like cultural problems with a society that's just that's just like what people do. This isn't like one or two people are doing this. And it's also not a thing where it's like, this is like some counterculture. Like, it's not like 17-year-olds going to a metal show and doing something crazy.
Right.
These are like adults.
And it's not medicine.
No, that's the crazy thing about it. That's like at the heart of it. These are just cheap Chinese-made consumer goods. That's all. It's just like, and there's something, because, I've been thinking a lot about my love of economics, and that's something I wanted to talk about today in a second. But since Bob Murphy was on the show last time, and I really particularly enjoyed that episode, and I just love listening to that guy and picking his brain, but for all the talk of like the economic problems in the country and the plight of the working class, or whether this policy is best or that policy is best, and you almost take a step back and go, man, I mean, we have this wealth that like there are so many just luxury consumer goods that we have access to that nobody else ever had, basically, in human history. You know what I mean? And then to see the way people are like treating it like that on a Black Friday, whatever you call it, riot type thing. I don't know. Just makes you think maybe it's not really about wealth. This is like a bigger question.
There should be a way to win the riot and get the stuff for free.
Probably.
Like if you knock the most people over or something.
Well, that does seem to be essentially what happens. If you knock the most people over, you win the most stuff. And then you still got to pay for it, but it's cheap. I don't understand why Walmart would want to do this.
Yeah, I don't
like
get
why
that
they
either.
wouldn't call this off.
Do you think there's ever been a guy who got like his cards and they're like, it's this, and he's like, do you see how many people I punched for this? Like, it's free now. Like,
Can you imagine like someone goes through all that and then they fucking, like they're bloodied up and they've beat a lot of other people up and they get their full card up there and they go, we can't read your chip. So I'm sorry, you might have to order a new card. I don't know. He's like, well, I didn't bring cash. Like, yeah, if you could put that stuff back for us, that'd be great. It's got to be a story like that out there. I don't know. It was like disturbing to me to watch. And this is I don't know. All this stuff just makes me feel old. Like, but then the thing is, it's not even like kids doing it. It's like these are adults. I just feel so out of touch with what anybody who could want to do that. Like, I get wanting like a new big screen TV. I mean, I just got one on Cyber Monday today. But let's say there was no such thing as Cyber Monday. I could get wanting a big screen TV, and maybe you only have $300 and the TV you want cost $800 or something like that. And so you're like, this is the only chance you could get it. But I could never imagine wanting a big screen TV enough to go do that. Like, and do you remember, which is, a great kind of example of the miracle of the free market and how great it is. But do you remember like when flat screen TVs first came out, how expensive they were?
10 grand.
Yeah, and they had like the big back on a TV that today you probably couldn't sell for a couple $100s, and simply because no one wants that. Literally, I don't even know if you could get a couple $100s for it, because you'd just be like, dude, I have to lug this huge thing into my house. And you can now, for a couple $100, get like, maybe you can't get like a Sony or a Mitsubishi or like one of the good brands, but you could get like one of the no-name brands. You could get a really nice, like a big screen, screen TV for a couple $100 now. And you're like, but those things were worth so much. So you can now already get what people were paying thousands of dollars for just a few years ago for next to nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's a little bit more than a few years ago, because I'm thinking back, I guess it's like, 10 years ago or something like that. But for what was, you can get better than what would have cost you $10,000 for a few $100, but you're still going to go through this like fucking riot to save a little bit on net. It's just like, where does this fucking mentality end? It's weird to me. I don't know. And of course, I'm sure some people, would wrongly blame it on capitalism. I don't really think the problem there is capitalism as much as the problem is like some type of cultural, issue.
Also, if you're participating in one of those riots, doesn't that mean you didn't really Thanksgiving at all? Isn't that, don't those things start like night of now, or it's early in the morning?
I don't know. I mean, I guess so. I saw all the videos were on, I don't know. It might have been like Thursday at midnight. I don't know. I was watching the videos on Friday, but I don't know.
Yeah, what happened to the good old days when you get drunk and pass out because you overate?
Yeah.
That's what Thanksgiving's all about.
Yeah.
People are missing the whole picture here.
A little bit of football, getting annoyed by your family,
overeating, passing out.
Drinking a lot, calling them all a bunch of communists, and then passing out with a belly full of turkey, stuffing, some potatoes.
That's what we killed the Indians for.
Isn't it? If not, it's why we should have killed them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wasn't there. And I'm not sure we even ever killed those Indians, to be honest.
Yeah.
There may have always just been a few, and they made it up, and then white guilt took over. But the point is, we have the holiday now, and you can't undo the past. Anyway, it's strange. Strange world that we're living in. So I was thinking a lot since the last episode, as I mentioned. Just it kind of brought me back to some of my roots of why I first got so interested in all this stuff. And a lot of the things that Bob was talking about, and just the way economics work, and talking about how we're kind of, it's interesting that I really do believe we're sitting at this moment where a ginormous bubble is about to burst. And when I was first, getting into this world, as I talk about all the time, it was right around the time of the 2008 financial crisis, where a big bubble burst. And according to the Austrian School of Economics, the government did just about everything wrong in response to it. And it kind of brought me back to that. Like, it's almost like this weird moment where now it's almost like I get to, like they say, like history is kind of like cyclical, and like it's almost like it's a decade later, and now I'm in this position where I've got a bit of like an audience and I've got a platform, and now it's like it almost seems like these things are repeating, where it's like we're getting bogged down in these military conflicts, or we've been the whole time, but we're about to have another bubble burst, and it's like, oh, it's almost like we get to run this thing again. You know what I mean? Like, and see, like,
I don't know. You definitely feel this way, but the last time when it burst, I had nothing. I wasn't gonna have anything for a while, so it's like let's reset. This is a good chance to.
Oh,
now it's like I don't want to have to go live at home again and not have money. And,
yeah, no, I know exactly.
I don't want to go through that one again. I did it. I definitely feel I feel that way a lot, but I also think that the way, and I'll tell you, I got lost down a rabbit hole of Peter Schiff videos. On YouTube recently, because as I was thinking about all this stuff, and he was really the first guy who got me into this. It was like after Ron Paul, I found Peter Schiff online, and then I ended up finding like all the other guys like Tom Woods and the Mises Institute and Bob Murphy and everybody else. And but what he would say, and he was so great with these analogies and putting them together, but what he would say was that the recession is the cure and the boom is the disease. And we've got it all backward when we think of the economic good times as the great period, and then the recession as the bad thing. And he's like, really, what it is kind of like if you do a bunch of heroin, you get yourself this artificial high, and then you crash the next day. And it's like, well, if your goal is a healthy body, then I can already see you trying to joke about how much you love heroin all over your face. No, I just think we threw cocaine on the hangover. That's what we did here.
Yes, but that's right. But it's like you could look at it like, oh no, you feel really bad now, but you felt really good yesterday. It's like, but the reason you feel bad now is because you felt good yesterday. You artificially felt good yesterday. So it's not, if you want a healthy body and that's your goal, then this feeling bad is actually a step in the right direction. Yes, you need this. You need a detox. So anyway. Always thought that was a really interesting way to think about things. I was, it kind of brought me back to one of the reasons, like why I love this topic so much. And I do, as I said with Bob Murphy, I think like, I think it's really important right now that we kind of, particularly when you look at the kind of Trump right wing, that it's particularly important that libertarians really get out and let people know that we see something coming here that's a problem. While Donald Trump is telling you to keep interest rates artificially low, I think we need to realize it's like, no, this is actually the problem. This is going to make things much worse, because I'm starting to believe more and more that the likelihood is that this is going to happen on Donald Trump's watch before 2020. That's what I'm starting to believe more and more. And if that is the case, then throw all these bets out the window about how Trump can pull off getting reelected. He is done. He is done if I'm right and this comes before 2020, and I think it's going to. And it's going to be bad. It's going to be worse than the 2008 bubble was. And I just think then you're going to get the left-wing takeover of government. Then the next step is, who knows what's going to come from that. But it's like, I feel like a lot of these guys, a lot of the populist right-wing guys, they kind of like, they know about libertarianism. They don't dismiss it in the same way the left does, like, oh, you're all a bunch of bigots or something like that, or you want children to die. But they just think like, it's almost like this weird dismissal where they're like, oh, these autistic libertarians who just live in the world of like whatever, like esoteric policy and don't really think about the real world. And it's kind of like, I think there is some legitimacy to that claim. Sometimes you will see libertarians just too much in this kind of autistic, I mean that casually, not like actually diagnosing anyone, but like, there is something to that, but it's like, hey, you know what? When it comes to like monetary policy and stuff like that, us autistic libertarians have actually been thinking about this for quite a while, and you might want to listen to us on it because we actually get this shit in a way that you guys don't. And so that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I must say, I even
I get your point, exactly what you were saying about like in 2008 being kind of broke and having nothing, and you're almost like, yeah, I welcome this on. Oh, did the stock market go way down? Well, guess what? If you don't own any stocks, that doesn't really mean anything to you. So, if you don't own a house, the housing prices coming down just means my rent might be cheaper. So I'm fine with that. And then now I'm in a situation where I'm doing okay, got a kid on the way. You're kind of like, stability seems nice. Don't really want any of that. But even when it's kind of scary or you're concerned about it, I'm still just so like, I find the whole thing so interesting. And I know that you do too. Like economics are really one of the things that you really find fascinating. And it's something that's different about us than most people. Like most people aren't interested in this shit. And I don't know if I was just thinking about that a lot lately. And I like the two things that I got really interested around 2007, 2008 were one, like libertarian theory or libertarian philosophy, and two was economics. And it's amazing to me as I think back about it that I never took an economics course my entire life. I mean, I didn't graduate college. I dropped out.
I failed a lot of them.
Did you?
Oh, yeah. Money
Really?
in banking 3 times, baby.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
I took all of them and failed the fuck out of them, baby.
That is so interesting.
Yeah.
Now, for me, I just think it's crazy. I look back because I graduated high school from like what was a good high school. Like I went to public school earlier on, but I went to a good private high school like that's supposed to be really good, and I did not take one economics class the whole time. They had one. There was senior year. It was an elective option. Like, I think you had to take one of these social science-y type classes, but economics was only one of them, and I chose something else. I forget. I don't even remember what it is that I took. But I didn't take it. And I was, and just from my perspective, looking back, that I think it is crazy that you would let kids graduate high school without anyone ever running by them. Like, this is how, there are some people who live in Central Africa and some people who live around skyscrapers. Here's why one is different than the other. Here's how all that works. Like, literally, this is at the heart of everything that your life is going to be about. Like, this is, and no, that's not worth one class on for all the other ridiculous stuff that it's like who decided that everyone has to read Catcher in the Rye, but you don't have to know anything about how an economy works? Like that just seems bananas to me, looking back at it. And the other thing that's crazy is that, so I remember, I remember some of my friends who did take the economics class and them just telling me how much it sucked and how boring it was. Just boring, basically a lot of math and a lot of like boring information. I remember talking to kids at college who were taking economics classes who just fucking hated it. We're just like, oh my God, it's just the most boring shit. It's just a hard class. It's not fun at all. Even you seem to.
No, there's sides of it that even in college were interesting, and then sides that were like, I can't even explain how horrible. Micro I found pretty interesting. Macro, not as much. Money and banking, I'd already kind of failed classes, so just kind of in that rhythm. You know? I was just like, I'm just going to see this one through. But some of the...
Which is the mainstream. It makes sense you say that because it is kind of like macro. They'll be like, oh, well, here's all these really interesting things about how it works. And then, or micro, rather.
Micro, I like.
Is interesting things about how it works. And then macro is like, well, throw all those rules out the window now because this is on a larger scale, which is all a bunch of bullshit anyway.
I'm real good with the charting. Like understanding supply, demand, and the way charts are going to move. That I was really good at. When you started putting it into like the equations for understanding currency, that stuff, I never followed it.
It's interesting. It's just interesting to me that you're so into this stuff as an adult.
But not in college.
But not in college. Well, I'm the same way. I mean, I wasn't into it at all as a student, but I really do. I think that a lot of it is that it's not taught properly and that you don't have, because I really do think that if people like Murray Rothbard or Bob Murphy or Gene Epstein were teaching a theory of economics class, I don't see how it wouldn't have been really interesting.
I've said this about school, and I hated school. There are a lot of reasons why I hate it, but I do think part of why I hated school is that you're just bullshit detectors going off, and you can't quite peg, like, when you're hearing truth is interesting.
Yes.
Sometimes you're hearing things, you're like, wow. And I remember I took a couple classes in college that were very interesting and kind of were in line with our way of thought. There was one called, it was like the economics of political science. One of the books we read, it was the logic of, what was it? It was the logic of political survival. Mm-hmm. And that introduced me to the idea of like, hey, politicians, they're not your friend. They're after power. It's a commodity.
Like just a public choice kind of idea that like, oh, there's that side of this as well.
So that was an interesting class, but so many of these other classes are not that, and you can't quite peg like, all right, something about here.
Well, I also think it's that, you're forced there.
Yeah.
Like that's a big part of it, at least through middle school and high school. I mean, that is something that just about every kid, I mean, there's exceptions, but the vast majority, certainly of kids that I went to school with, our general idea was that school sucks. This is not fun. This isn't something we want to do. This is something we have to do. And that's not really the mentality that, at least, look, even if there are a lot of people who feel that way about their jobs to some degree, they're like, it's a thing. It's like, you did pick this job and you're getting money. You're getting something in exchange for being there. It's not the same thing as just being like, oh, I'm just here because my parents made me or because the law makes me or whatever. But I really do wonder, like, I just wonder how it could be presented. And like you were saying, that truth is naturally interesting. And it's crazy to me that school is made so boring for so many people when there's so much interesting shit going on.
I think it's not just boring. This was part of my experience. There's some stuff that's just out of your skill set. And so you shouldn't be doing it. And there's no reason to get caught up on it.
This is why you shouldn't be forced into it, essentially. Yeah. It's like, I know Gene Epstein said when he was teaching that he used to just tell everyone the first day that, like, he'll give you a C if you don't want to show up. Like, I forget exactly how he did it.
I'd be like, I'm out. Thanks, dude.
But that's it. But I'll tell you, and I think you're like me in this sense that I might have just taken the C and left. I might have. But there would be something about that would be intriguing to me.
You'd be like, I want to hear this guy out.
There'd be something about that would be like, all right. Really?
You know what I was so cocky. This did not, at some point it stopped working, but for like the first 3 years I did really well, and then the last year I took for the next 2 years straight.
Yeah. No, I get it.
These things happen.
Yeah.
But if I used to not show, I never went to class ever, to the point that if you lost like a percentage of your grade for not showing up to class, I would just accept that as being off.
You're like, okay, so I'm starting with a
I would just be like, all right, I'll get an A minus here.
Yeah.
No worries.
Starting with an A minus. We'll probably end up around a B.
B plus, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I get that completely, but I also get that, like, you don't want to teach to someone who's in a hostage situation, who's like forced to be there. But you also, I just think there's like, I don't know, to me, if I were going to teach economics to high school kids or college kids or something like that, obviously I'm not qualified to teach economics, but, more so probably than some people who do it. But I would always start with something. I would probably every single time I taught the class, on the first day, give out I Pencil by Leonard Read, which to me is like, that's because I remember like when I first found like free market economics and Austrian economics specifically, how much I was like, this is so fucking interesting. And right away when I just said before, like where you go like, okay, so there are like the state of living the way people in Central Africa live, or the way people in Asia, in certain parts still live in this world, like living in extreme grinding dirt poverty, that is the normal state of human beings. Like that's like what everyone has lived like for most of human history. And we live in this. And right away, that's kind of interesting. It's like, why? Why do we have all this? Like, what's the story of that? And I Pencil by Leonard Read?
I don't, but okay. I'm following the theory.
So let me tell you.
And I went to college. I'm pretty sure the answer to your question is because we have to be afraid of white men.
Well, that's right. It doesn't. It really flies in the face of the narrative of everything else that they're going to teach you at college. But okay, so I Pencil. I mean, I'll give you my version of it. So basically, Leonard Read writes this essay called I Pencil, and it's from the perspective of a pencil. Okay. Telling you about his life. But this is more or less the idea of it. I'll give it to you in my words, but I think it's just fucking incredible.
There's some good, not the sharpener moments.
Yeah, that's pretty brutal. That's like the Holocaust for those guys. So the idea is this. It's like you take a pencil, and he makes the point that nobody in the world knows how to make a pencil. There is no human being in the world who's ever had the knowledge to make a pencil. And he actually starts breaking it down. And like, you could do this with anything. You could do this with any household object. He just chooses a pencil. But so he's like, in the essay, it's a lead pencil, but I think that's a little outdated because I don't think pencils are made with lead anymore. But so it's like graphite is like the what you write with in a pencil, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, so in order to make graphite, it's like, it's in the ground. You have to drill it out of the ground. So in order to do that, you have to know how to make a drill. Now, in order for a drill, you need metal. In order to get metal, you'd need, and like you go down every single step, and like whatever, like in order to get that pencil to the supplier, it needs to drive on a truck. For a truck, you need rubber for the tires. To get rubber, you need this process. To make the engine, you need this process. And if you actually go through every single thing that it takes to make a pencil, it's like, it's not just that there's not one person who knows how to do it. There's not 100 people who know how to do it. It's thousands and thousands of different people's expertise all coming together. And if you were to think this through just logically, and you were to go, okay, so you need the expertise of thousands, tens of thousands of different people all coming together, all working crazy hard, and they all have to put their knowledge together to make this thing the pencil. You'd be like, oh, it's probably going to cost you like $10 million to have a pencil. But it doesn't. It costs you a few pennies. And they're all over the place. And we don't even care about them. And they're all over the world. And if you break a pencil, it's like, whatever. Pencil's broken. If you see a pencil lying on the street, you're like, yeah, it's dirty. I don't want it. And it's pretty fucking incredible that all this happens and there's no department of pencils. There's no pencil czar that like organizes all of this. It's all done spontaneously through voluntary cooperation on the free market. And it's just this like, it's a great example of the invisible hand and the division of labor and how this all comes together in this magical way. And the pencil's just a fucking pencil. Like that's nothing. We're talking into microphones. You've got a computer in front of you. There are these miracles that are all around us and no one cares. Like no one thinks about it. It's like no one ever dives into like, how does this work? How does this all come together? And instead they sit you down in school and they tell you about how George Washington chopped down the cherry tree and didn't lie about it. Or, it's I've given it a million times with the Tom Woods Walmart analogy, but Tom would say he'd be like, there's these miracles all around us and you get in school and no one teaches you the wonders of the market and how incredible this is. And instead they're like, let me tell you about how a bill becomes a law. Cause that's such a fucking interesting story, right? It's like, I don't know, a bunch of bought and paid for pieces of shit crony capitalists like get fucking bribed by these fucking lobbyists and then they go and write something down on a piece of paper. Like that's what's interesting to you, not the fact that there's miracles all around us. So anyway, that's how I would start my first day, because I just don't see how you could see that shit and not think it was so goddamn interesting. All right, let's take a quick second and thank our brand new sponsor for today's show. Very excited to have on cigarclub.com. Hey guys, the holidays are coming up. You're going to be getting together with friends and family, and that's why it's the perfect time to have cigarclub.com on our show to let you know about their great products. Personally, I'm not an everyday cigar smoker, but I love them on a special occasion. Let's be honest, if nothing else, cigars are so freaking cool. You just feel better about yourself when you have a cigar. You feel like a man. You feel like you just led the Boston Celtics to a championship game in 1966. It's a good feeling. Anyway, if you want to enhance the next time you get together with your friends, go to cigarclub.com, a cigar service that will select cigars special for you and deliver them right to your door. If you've ever tried to pick a cigar, it's not the easiest thing in the world if you don't know what you're doing. Sometimes the corner store has them, but it's hard to tell if they're fresh. Other times you go to a place that has a big humidifier, but there's an overwhelming amount of options. There's no way to tell what's good or what you actually like. That's why you'll love cigarclub.com. They handpick cigars around your personal taste. So what they do is they have a short questionnaire, and it's real quick and easy, and then they can figure out exactly the cigar flavor profile that you're going to love. So here's just some examples of the questions. They'll ask you things like, what's your favorite type of chocolate? What type of coffee do you like in the morning? What's your go-to beverage? Things like this. And then they get a sense of what type of cigar you're going to like. So you don't have to go in there and just look at a big wall of cigars and not know what you're doing, as I usually do when I go to a cigar shop and buy a cigar. So go to cigarclub.com today. Really, really great site, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. So after you fill out the questionnaire, from there they send you a customized pack of cigars selected especially for you. Cigars have nicotine, which is an addictive chemical, so we recommend these for every once in a while, and cigarclub.com has options for every profile and budget. So check out cigarclub.com, pick up some custom cigars for your next get-together, and they'll be delivered to you with a cigar cutter and everything. All you have to do is smoke book it. And if you use the promo code POTP15, you're going to get 15% off. So once again, that's cigarclub.com. The promo code is POTP15 for 15% off. All right, let's get back into the show. But anyway, so the Austrian School of Economics, once I, kind of found those guys, and that's really what Peter Schiff was talking about. Like Schiff used to, he'll quote Mises every now and then, and he really breaks down like the business cycle and things like that. But what was so interesting to me about all of them was the fact that they just saw economics, from my perspective, for what it is. And, I guess like most people would say modern economics probably started in like the 1700s. Like that's when like Wealth of Nations was written.
Yeah.
Like Adam Smith. And those guys are great. Like there's some really interesting stuff that they, like Adam Smith, figuring out kind of like the invisible hand and stuff like that is really, really interesting. But they really got a lot of shit wrong. Like Adam Smith and Ricardo and then Karl Marx jumped up. They all believed in the labor theory of value, which is just kind of crazy. I mean, it's almost like it's as crazy as anybody, it's like believing that the clouds caused disease like they did in the 1600s, and then they just figured out like, oh, that had nothing to do with it at all. This is just ridiculous. Like I think it was in the 1600s when they believed that like rice created life because they'd have like piles of rice or grain of some sort. And they noticed like larvae and like bugs in it. And they were like, oh, it must be coming from the rice. And then, they like did some more tests where they put it in a glass jar and they were like, oh, it doesn't really create life if it's
with the little,
sealed.
The little thing on top.
Yeah.
The air
Now,
get in.
right.
I remember
And then
that.
and then it's like they realize it's like, oh, flies are just flying in there and laying their fucking eggs, and that's where it comes from. It's not that
Did
they
some
create,
guy like just hop out from the pile to
holy shit, don't do that. You get, sorry, dude.
Isn't it crazy that Austrian, like from an academic perspective, we're fringe? There's so much evidence to it, and it seems so like I remember the first time I'd heard about it, and I'd taken a bunch of these economic classes before I started failing all of them. I was working on like a gold trading desk or whatever. These people knew their shit. They were interesting people to be around, and someone brought it up. He goes, yeah, like, because they were talking about at that time all the money that the Fed was like putting into the market. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, whatever the conversation was, we were talking about inflation. He goes, well, if you look at it from the Austrian perspective, it's inflation once it's printed, and just the bank's balance sheets are inflated. It just hasn't but there's inflation. You might not see it until the banks start, unloading all the assets from their balance sheet, but it's there.
Well, that's it. It all kind of, I think it all comes from the fact that nobody really understands prices.
Yeah.
Like the Austrians do. So if you look at like what a price actually is. Now, I'm not saying that no other economist would give you a reasonable answer for what a price is, but it just seems like the Austrians took this a little bit more seriously and had a more thorough understanding of it, and that's why they realized that prices play such a role, because really interest rates are just prices. I mean, that's what it is. It's the price of what money costs. And so what the Austrians first really put out there was the subjective theory of value, which just smashes the labor theory of value, which is just that. So the idea that something is not valuable because you put labor into it, that has nothing to do with anything. I mean, you could, if you think about it right now, you could put.
You spend your whole day hammering this wall. You haven't
but
done
even
anything.
that, because
It's
they
not
would
labor.
argue, right, sure. But even that, and that is useful to prove a point, but even some of those guys would argue that it had to be like productive labor. It couldn't just be any type of labor. But if you think about it, if you started producing like horse and buggies in an automobile society, they're not going to be worth much. And it doesn't matter that they take way more labor to make than, say, you know what I mean, like a car that's made by machines today if you made them by hand. It doesn't matter. They're not going to be worth much. And why is that? Because, well, people don't want it. People have better options. And what the Austrians really figured out, and I think this was actually Menger.
Here's a crazy another example. Let's
Sure.
say me and you, we're both scientists, and tomorrow we both come up with a cure from cancer. Yours has side effects and mine doesn't.
Yeah.
So those aren't of equal value. I'm going to make more money. You're probably going to make zero money.
And why is
because
that?
of what I just came up with. And it's not a function of the labor we put into it. It's that I came up with something more valuable. Value is not a function of the labor.
And why is it valuable? It's valuable because people
want it.
Prefer that
Yeah.
they have this cure without the side effects. That's what it is. It's all about human desire. And the thing that I believe it was Karl Menger, because Karl Menger really started the Austrian school, but really it's all about Ludwig von Mises. Like, he was the guy who really fucking, like, really worked it into a science. But the fact, what he came up with was the fact that value is subjective, that it's a completely subjective thing. So if you, you know, if me and you trade, like, I don't know, like a beer for a fucking cigarette, or maybe I need a few more cigarettes than just one. But if we trade, then all you can really deduce from that is that I wanted the cigarettes more and you wanted the beer more. Sorry for such a degenerate example here on this Christian conservative podcast. It's the only way I can understand things. Now you gotta keep all of a sudden Rob's into economics. But so he basically figured out, and then they would figure out things that, like, you know, there was like I think it was called the water diamond paradox, where economists for a while couldn't figure out why diamonds were worth more than water. Because they'd be like, well, you need water to live, and a diamond is really just like a luxury item.
Women are really stupid.
And that's the answer.
And men want pussy. Yeah. That's it.
That's where it comes in.
I figured it out.
But what the Austrians would say to that would be like, okay, well, it's all subjective. So let's say you're in a desert and you're about to die of thirst. Now what's more valuable to you? It's like, obviously, the water all of a sudden. You'd give everything you have for that water, and you could care less about a fucking diamond at that point. It's only when there's a reasonable expectation that you've got water covered that these other things happen. So it's just about your, you know, like, your momentary needs. And the point is to you is that it's all, the value comes from the fact that people want it and are willing to give their own goods or services for it, and that's represented by money. But this is why what you know, I think when you understand where value comes from, people start to the Austrians start to understand what prices really mean, and the fact that prices have information embedded in them. So prices are not just, it's not just a subjective thing like, oh, this is what somebody decided to charge for something. It's like, this is what somebody decided to charge that they were able to get. So it lets you know where human desire is. I think one of the things that the Austrians get right from the beginning is the fact that they have an understanding of human psychology. And that's not to say that the Austrians aren't particularly concerned with, like, diving deep into human psychology and psychoanalyzing someone, but just the fact that human psychology is at work here. Like, that's why they describe economics as human action, because that's what it is. It's human beings acting, and human beings have different subjective desires. So it's like, that's what this is all about. And when you realize that, you get into what the information is about prices. And when somebody is, say, building something, if they are choosing to use bricks instead of steel, and they're looking at what the price of bricks costs versus what the price of steel costs, there's all types of information that's embedded in there. It's about, like, how, you know, like, what supply there is of this, what demand there is of this, like, there's all types of information that you're getting from there. And when you fuck with prices, you fuck with production in a way that isn't necessarily intuitive to some people. So if you, for example, right, like, let's just say if you have price controls on steel. Let's say you just, like, said you dictated that you're gonna artificially lower the price of steel. Like, there's gonna be a law passed that says steel will be sold for half as much as it's sold for now. So what's gonna happen is, number one, probably a lot less of it'll be produced, because a lot of people will be like, oh, well, they're going to go into something else because they can't make nearly as much money anymore, right? Because they have to sell it for half as much. So they're going to go out. But I guess some people will still produce steel. Maybe somebody owns a steel mill and they're like, this is all I can do, so I might as well, I'll lay off a bunch of people. We won't make as much, but I can still get by at this rate, right? So now the other thing you're going to have is your people are going to start using steel in situations where they might have used something else, because now it's way cheaper to use that. So you have all these people building things with steel, thinking that there's a large supply of it because the prices are so cheap. And what's going to happen? You're going to fucking run out of it, and it's going to be this big problem because resources are now being misallocated. And this is what Ludwig von Mises' book, Socialism, this is what he broke down about why socialism can't work. He was like, this is why it can't work, because there's no pricing system. So you never know. Entrepreneurs have no idea what to use. People have no ideas. Government bureaucrats can't just decide what to use in what situation. And anyway, so this I think is all related to how they figured out the business cycle. And this is something that the Austrians figured out that nobody else has a clue about. And that's the business cycle. And that's why is it that we have these booms and busts in an economy? Like, what is that about? Why is it that this happens? Why is it that we all know that this is a thing where we have recessions and depressions, and then we have peaks, and we have booms? Like, why is that? What's that about? Why is it that sometimes the economy is like humming along, everything's really good, and then sometimes there's some fucking huge recession? Why would that be? And the kind of standard, the Marxist explanation, and I think the Keynesian explanation, is both that capitalism is inherently unstable. So it produces booms and busts, which is like, okay.
The business cycle. Well, smooth it out.
Well, right. Well, that's the Keynesian model, is that you have to smooth it out. The Marxist model is more that it's can't be smoothed out. Like, you just need a socialist revolution. It will lead to that. But the issue with that is that even if you take the Keynesian approach, that it's like there's these animal spirits and capitalism tends toward instability, which is literally what Keynes said, that there were animal spirits of the markets. It's like, so why would it be that this would happen in every industry across the board? I mean, like, you could certainly see if there was like, I don't know, whatever, like some people made some bad decisions in one industry, so that industry goes from booming to busts. But why would all industries, or a huge proportion of industries, go from boom to bust? Like, why would that be the case? And, the kind of modern pop economic thought that, like, it's because of greed on Wall Street is what caused the 2008 crash. It's like, really? So there was just all of a sudden greed peaked in like 2004, right. 2005, 2006.
No one were greedy before that.
Yeah, like, I mean, obviously, like, greed is kind of operating at a maximum all the time. So I don't think hedge fund owners want more or less money next year than they did last year. But what they really figured out, the Austrians, was that this was all about expanding credit into the market and then creating all of this malinvestment. And this is why it permeates the whole economy. And it feels, and this is why we're about to go through another crash. So I've heard people talk that, before, sometimes people who like the show, but they don't really get this part of it. And they're kind of like, I know you talk about like these artificially low interest rates all the time. Like, what exactly does that mean? I look at it more like, so if you have an interest rate, right? Basically what that is a price for money. So this is the price that you can get money at. So if you borrow money, and it's and you have to pay, whatever, let's say you have a credit card bill and it's like you have to pay 10% interest. Well, that's the price for getting money from your credit card is 10%. Okay. And if you, whatever, if you have a home loan and it's like 5 or 6% or something like that, like that's the price of borrowing the money from the bank. And that price has information in the same way that the price of steel or the price of anything else has. Now, what happens when you have interest rates artificially lowered, which is what the Federal Reserve does essentially when they set the Fed funds rate, or they target the Fed fund rate, what you do is you create this malinvestment. So I've heard analogies before. I think this might have been Tom Woods' one, but it was kind of like, he was saying that it's kind of like you're building a building out of bricks, and if you have the interest rates artificially lower, it makes the builder think that there are more bricks than there are. And so you're building this building, and by the time you get to the end of it, you realize you run out of bricks and you don't have it. I thought that was a decent analogy. The one that Peter Schiff gave that I thought was really good too was that he goes, imagine you're basically, with these artificially low rates, you're sending a signal to entrepreneurs that they're not able to properly decode. So he goes, imagine if like you owned a restaurant and like the circus came to town, and you have this
hot dogs,
right? And
you're like, we're in the hot dog game.
Well,
we're gonna feed.
Well, let's just say you have a restaurant and the circus comes in, and all of a sudden your restaurant is packed. It's packed but you don't know that this is because a circus came in. This is just to you, like, it's just a market signal. It's just like, oh, your restaurant's packed. So now you're like, holy shit, we're packed. We're going to expand. We're going to open 2 more restaurants. We're going to build a new kitchen. We're going to put all this money into investing in the business because there's this huge demand now. And then all of a sudden the circus leaves town and it's gone. And what are you left with now? Now you're left with all this malinvestment. So that's more or less what happens. So if you have, let's say the interest rate is at 10%, and that's what it costs for money, probably, who, just for the sake of argument, picking a random number, the businesses who are going to expand would only be businesses who are really certain that expansion is a good idea right now, or at least up to a certain level. They're like, okay, we'll borrow money even though we got to pay back 10%. You know what I mean? But because we have this business model. And there are lots of businesses that would look at 10% and go, yeah, it's too risky. It's not worth it for us to invest in all of this right now. We're getting by right now, but I don't know if we're ready to do that. But if you were to bring the interest rates down to 2%, there's a lot more of these businesses who would go, oh, at 2%, I'll borrow money and I'll invest. And this is the malinvestment that happens. And what happens is after a while, since you're not affecting real demand, like just like the analogy with steel, since you're not actually affecting the real production of steel, you're just artificially bringing the prices down. It's not like there actually is more steel out there. If more people start using steel, eventually you run out of this. Eventually this catches up to you. And this is the situation we're in now, where to avoid the problems of the 2008 financial crash, they basically flooded the market with liquidity and kept interest rates at near zero for close to a decade. And now we have to deal with all of the malinvestment that's happened over the last 10 years. Plus, we got to deal with more of it because we never really felt the pain from the NASDAQ bubble, which we turned into the real estate bubble, Brian, let's see if this is, and I know a lot of people don't watch the video, they just listen to this, but if you could pull up interest rates by year, USA, and see if there's like a graph that comes up at the top of that. And it'd almost be interesting just to look at. But just to kind of get an idea of what happened here. But we had a boom in the 90s that busted around the year 2000. Then we had, okay, so here, all right, so that's here. Can you just zoom in a little bit on it so I can see the years at the bottom? Okay, and just go up to the top. So what are we looking at here? This is the long-term interest rates. Yeah, but this is going to be a problem because these are long-term rates, and I was looking more for the Fed fund. Okay, so no, but that's okay. Pull it back up. This might work too. So zoom in a little bit on that. I mean, if you see, even by this, and these are more, yeah, you know what? I would need like the Fed fund rate if we were going to do it. Whatever. You know what? It's not even that important because most people listen by audio anyway. But the point is that basically interest rates were lowered in the 90s, helped fuel this dot-com bubble. And then around the year 2000, when there was the NASDAQ crash, it was maybe 2001, 2002, something like that. And then Alan Greenspan, under George W. Bush, lowered them down to something like 1.5%. And then you had the dot-com bubble. Right, okay, so this is a better example here. So what you had there in 2000, right, this is what created the fucking, the housing bubble. I mean, there were a few other things involved, Franny and Fetty and different like regulations. But if you look there, right after 2000, where you bring them down all the way down to a little bit over 1% at a certain point, right? And you have these artificially low interest rates. Now, what we're looking at is in between 2000 and 2005, you see? Okay? So now you have in that area right there, you have all of the money gets very, very cheap. So where does the bubble go? Well, in this situation, it went into something that you need to borrow money to get, which was housing. That's where it happened to go in this. And we also had a lot of other things that directed the money into housing. But so you have all these people, and a lot of them got adjustable rate subprime mortgages that they could afford when the interest rates were down there. But you can only keep interest rates artificially low for so long. So as the rates started to come up, right, now you have the housing crash. Okay, so right there at the top, at the end of that, right there, that's where you have the housing crash. Now, in response to this housing crash, we brought interest rates all the way down to their lowest levels in American history and kept them there for close to a fucking decade. Now, they're creeping back up, But even now, if you notice, I mean, they're still about as low as they were at previous low points. So what's happening now is that that more or less to me represents the size of what the crash in 2008 is versus the size of what the next crash is going to be. So we got the 2008 crash from that. Now we're looking at this. Buckle up, because this is going to get juicy. So I think all of this stuff, and maybe it's fucking boring to you, and maybe it's like, this is a little bit lost in the weeds, and it's not as interesting as just some of the stuff where we talk about culture or talk about wars or other things like that. But I'm telling you, when the fucking economy crashes, then it becomes kind of interesting to everybody. And then everybody goes, oh, why the fuck is my house being foreclosed on? Why can't I get any credit? Why can't I, why are my...
White people and those rich bankers.
Yeah, well, that's right. And by the way, this is who a lot of people are going to blame it on. It'll get blamed on Trump's fucking tax cuts. It'll get blamed on just Trump in general. It'll get blamed on free market capitalism or business greed or whatever. But there will be this other smaller group of people who I think were drawn into like the right-wing populist thing, who hopefully will be willing to give libertarianism another look. Because some of the other people... there is a reason why libertarianism had a big moment after the last crash. And I'm hoping we have another one. I think that could be like the only silver lining of another big crash, is at least people start waking up to how crazy all this shit is. But look, it's coming. There's no way it can't. The fucking misallocation is there already. So it's not a question of whether or not it's going to come. It's just when and how bad. Excuse me. The only question is how soon and how bad. And my guess is pretty soon and pretty bad. That's my guess. So we'll see. But I don't think there's going to be any running away from this one. All right. Let's transition a little bit. That's kind of what I wanted to open up with. And then I did once again, I asked some people in the Part of the Problem Inner Circle what was on their mind, because I like getting feedback from our loyal supporting listeners.
And was their answer quantitative easing 1, 2, 3 and credit asset bubbles?
Oh, was that the
Yeah.
question? No, that wasn't. But that would have been great if it was. It'd been like covered. Next. Yeah. So, the first comment that I got from the Part of the Problem Inner Circle, which, by the way, you can get into the Part of the Problem Inner Circle. All you got to do is become a supporting listener over at gasdigitalnetwork.com. Use promo code POTP. You get a monthly discount. You also get on-demand access to our hundreds of episodes of the podcast that are archived away. So enjoy that. And, of course, you get into the Part of the Problem Inner Circle. So there's all that good stuff. And all you have to do is you go on the forum, the Part of the Problem forum, give us your Facebook name, and then request access to the Part of the Problem Inner Circle. And then, eventually you get let in.
Yeah, you just got to do a couple Hail Marys. Get baptized. You just got to be a good old-fashioned Christian.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I will point out, just so that, because, I do it about every month. Maybe we'll start doing it a little bit more often, and then people get real mad when they don't get in. Oh, yeah. Real upset. They send me real nasty messages on Facebook Messenger like, hey, fuckface.
Send them to Rob. Keep sending them to Rob Bernstein. He's your guy.
We use the search tool. So when you post your name in the forum, just make sure it's the same name as what you requested. Because I'm going to basically, if you put your request on Facebook, I copy and paste that into like the search in the forum. If you're in, like, if I see that name, you're good. If the names don't match up, that's it. You're not getting in. Simple instructions, kids.
All right, there you go.
Get baptized.
Okay, so here's something that is the first comment when I asked what people wanted to talk about today, and this was brought up by a lot of people, and I've seen a lot of people have been sending this to me. I would not know that this existed if it wasn't for the Part of the Problem Inner Circle and other people on social media. So thank you for filling me in. But it's what I guess is being called #thought audit. Thought? Okay, there we go. Thought audit. And as Patrick writes, the Snapchat sex workers getting reported to the IRS. So,
first you gotta. I wasted too many of my years in yeshiva to know what that was. So you'll have to thought.
THOT. So, as I've been told, and I would not know this if it wasn't for you good people. I think I did look this up once, like years ago, but I just forgot. But it's that hoe over there. And it basically what they're talking about is that there are
rude
these
concept because I want to know where. Just tell me where. Like, there shouldn't just be some esoteric.
It's kind of vague and esoteric intentionally. It's over there, wherever there is to you. That's where that hoe is. So I guess there are these chicks, from what I understand, who like they basically post like naked pictures of themselves, or maybe they do like semi-pornographic things or something like that. Like they play with themselves or whatever, and then they get guys to send them money. And I guess what's been going on is that a lot of these chicks happen to be very like left-leaning feministy types who will then go and report other guys on social media for like saying some, like right-wing type thing. Like, if you're problematic at all, which this has been going on for a while now, for years, this sex work is empowering and I show off my ass on Instagram or whatever, but then those same people will be going around and reporting other people for like hate speech or something like that. And so what a bunch of these other guys have now decided to do is report them to the IRS for making all this money that none of them are paying taxes on.
Hilarious.
So those would be literally my two thoughts on this, is that this whole thing is hilarious and awful. It's hilarious, listen, and if you're a part of it, stop. Don't be any part on either side of this.
Okay, just being a tattletale, you suck as a human being. Doesn't matter who you're tattling on. If you're getting off on tattling, you suck. And if you're also getting off on tattling to the government and getting someone, you really suck. But we all have to pay taxes, and if you're taking the lazy way out and just making money off your dumb tits, fuck you.
Yeah, look,
yeah.
I understand your anger and resentment, but there might be some underlying issues there that we got to work on. Look, man, there's something. So this is a tweet. If you report a thought to the IRS, they collect taxes from her. You can receive up to 30% of that amount.
Do you also get to see the pictures for free? Because that would be like a really good way to get guys.
I don't think they can make you do that, but there is actually a financial incentive to defeating thoughterry. All right. Well, look, there's a word that I didn't know existed before. So thoughterry is being brought down. Now, I got to say, I just think it's horrible to report somebody to the IRS. I think that's a really shitty thing to do.
But in this case, a little hilarious.
I get where
to just be some dumb chick in your house showing off your tits on the internet.
I'm not denying that it's
hilarious. Living on a pile of cash and getting a knock.
Lots of really horrible things can be hilarious. Listen to Legion of Skanks. We specialize in it, okay? But I do think it's a fucking horrible thing to do. I wouldn't support it at all. And I think that if you're getting, look, man, the idea of people getting banned from social media, it's like, it sucks, but it is kind of the world we're living in, and you got to deal within those fucking parameters. Like, I just, if you practically don't want to get kicked off there, the idea that you're letting this anger at chicks who are like showing their asses on social media, I don't know. It also, to me, it reeks of this kind of like incel type quality where you're furious at this chick because you're not the one who's getting laid. But it's like, I don't know. I'd stay away from that. I think you're much better off to just add value to yourself and go out there and get your own chick. Like, I don't know. That's my initial thought.
I got my own ideas here.
It is, well, what? Go ahead.
I would never take a government job. But if the government job is finding the whores on...
Well, it's the best one yet.
Posting
There's no question.
I'll sit. You put me in a cubicle. Probably put a door on it. I don't want to weird out the other people working at the IRS. But I'll spend all day tracking down who's posting nudes.
Did you track them down? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Hundreds. Did you report anyone? I'll look into that tomorrow.
I forgot the reporting part.
Got distracted there for a while. They're out there though. Can guarantee that. Well, there is something that I've noticed where there are all types of, I guess what I would call kind of, I was going to say borderline prostitution, but I'm not sure if that's completely accurate, because some of them I guess you couldn't really call prostitution, but things that are kind of in that world that exist all around, that people don't really,
Mail in your panties.
Well, look, I don't know about that particular one, but first of all, there are lots of younger chicks who date older guys and basically get put on the payroll, like basically get like a credit card or get an allowance or things like that. Like that happens a lot. There's all types of chicks online now who will have like a wish list. like an Amazon wish list that they post, and then they'll just take, you know, like nude pictures and stuff like that, or they'll do like a lot of like videos or like kind of, you know, like sometimes fully nude, sometimes like semi-nude stuff online, and then they just basically get these guys to buy them shit.
That one shocks me because like porn
so
is
strange,
free, and there's so much of it.
Because that's not exactly what those guys are looking for. They're looking more for some type of personal relationship with that chick, like, oh, I got you that fucking iPhone, like, how'd you like that? Or I don't know. It's really strange to me and really weird. I find all of it, here's the Christian conservative in me, I find all of it just deeply troublesome, like deeply troubling that look, I don't care what these dummy left-wing feminists tell you. There's nothing empowering about sex work. It's literally the saddest thing that a fucking chick can do. Those chicks, by and large, feel terrible about themselves. They're not like happy people. Most of them fucking want to get out of it. I know this one chick who's like in the comedy world, and she's one of the ones who leads the charge about like sex work being empowering and how great it was and how much she, you know, like learned from it and, you know, whatever, all this nonsense. And I remember there's one time when she was broke and getting kicked out of her apartment, and she started crying in front of me. It was just the two of us. And she started crying about how she thinks she was going to have to go back into sex work. And I was like, but I thought your whole thing was that it's awesome and empowering. And she's like, well, no, it is. I mean, there's aspects of it that really are. And I was like, but you're crying right now at the thought that you have to go back to selling your pussy for money, because obviously you would be. This is literally what people do when they have no other options in life and they've been abused as a child their entire childhood and they're in the worst situations you could imagine. There's no chick who's like, whatever. It's a sad, pathetic thing. But what you want to do as a guy is fucking rise above that level of shit, add value to yourself, be the type of man that's going to attract a good chick into your life, and not get caught up in this game of like reporting them to the fucking IRS. I mean, it's also, I got to say, I do find that I've never been one of these people who thinks like voting is like, you know, like an implicit endorsement of the state or something like that. But if you're calling the IRS on people, in my opinion, you're doing some real evil shit. Like that's truly fucked up. You're literally calling a criminal organization to go harass and look into somebody who's probably going to be fucked now for a while over that situation if it works out the way you're intending for it to. And the fact that they pay you off to do it is just, I just find the whole fuck thing disgusting. It's like, fine, if you want to just abandon all of your morals because you want to win some type of fucking fight, but you're not winning any war that way. You can't bring down all of the thoughterry. Was that the word? No, you're just, you know, you're just taking one or two of them down. There's a reason why prostitution is the oldest profession. That's always going to be there, man. They'll always be there. It's just, if you're a fucking woman, you should hope that you're not one of the ones who has to fucking do that. And if you're a fucking guy, you better hope you fucking end up with a chick who's not one of the ones who has to do that. That's all. I don't know.
No arguments from me, buddy.
That's all I got for you on the fucking hashtag thought audit.
But seriously, if you know someone at the IRS that's hiring,
oh yeah,
I'm qualified.
Look, Robbie needs a part-time gig.
I'll track him down.
Gas Digital is only paying so much. Okay, so Mike writes, I have 2 kids and just found out I'm having twins.
Hey.
Well, congratulations, Mike. I need a good old-fashioned, passionate Dave Smith rant to talk my wife into homeschooling them. Okay. Well, I'm not completely against the idea of like certain private schools or vocational schools or things like that. Government schools, I'm really, really passionately against. And I, as I've said before, it's like, I just think like you are, you're sending your kids to be propagandized by the government. And it may not be as blatant today as it has been in the past, but if you are getting up and pledging allegiance to the state every morning, don't think that that's not having some type of effect on your kid. And there's, this is like the reason why schools were started. It's not education, it's schooling. And there's a big difference. And I would just say that, you are sending, essentially, from my perspective, your kids into what are state-run prisons for a huge portion of their life. A huge portion of your life. Some of the shit that goes on between, like, what it's not just what teachers there do to kids, but what kids do to other kids because they're fucking unsupervised. You're sending your kid into a fucking, basically a situation where the kids, it's like this Lord of the Flies thing where the kids all, there's only one teacher for like every 30 or 40 kids or something like that. So they can't possibly regulate every single interaction that the kids are having. And you're going to guarantee that out of those kids, a bunch of their kids are just being raised like shit. They're being hit at home. They're being fucking, like abused in a various, one of various different ways. And when you just have a whole bunch of kids in a Lord of the Flies situation, the one who rises up and becomes the leader or becomes the one who's influential usually isn't the one who is like the most well-balanced, had the best childhood. Like, that's not who fucking rises up and takes over. And it's just, there are so many people out there, man, who are like fucking scarred for life over shit that happened to them in school, one way or the other. I would give serious consideration to actually raising your kids yourself. This is how it was done for most of human history. Kids were actually raised by their parents. I'd also remind you that some of the most brilliant geniuses of all time didn't go to school. It's like a modern statist idea that that's necessary in order to produce a good child. And if your wife needs more than that, I would say just go look at some of the numbers. Look at how homeschooled kids perform, particularly structured homeschool kids perform, compared to public school kids. It's not even close. They do way better. And that's, that there's a reason for that. It makes sense. So I don't know if that was quite what you were looking for, but that's what I got for now. All right. One more person writes, reporting thoughts to the IRS. It was a real popular one. We already covered that. Jan writes, can you do a show with Nick Mullen and have him defend some of his socialist anti-libertarian talking points? Obviously not for this show, but would be a good one in the future. Yeah, a lot of people have asked me about that. I don't know. I'm down to do it. I'm down. I don't know if Nick really wants to come on and do like a thing like that. But if he's down, I'd be down to do it. I like Nick a lot. I think he's a really funny guy, really good, really talented broadcaster. And I like Nick. We're not like super close or anything, but I'd be down to do that. I'd have no problem with it. So yeah, I don't know what else to say. Maybe I'll reach out to him, see what he wants to do. Someone else said throw Mike Racine in there too. Yeah, sure. I'm down to do that. I'd be down to argue with some comedians who are leading the other way. I love Mike Racine. I think he's fucking hilarious. He's a really good dude. But yeah, I'm sure. I honestly, I don't even really know what their politics are. I haven't really heard their anti-libertarian talking points. I've talked to Nick about politics like a couple times very briefly and always thought his ideas were a little backward, but that's true with most people. Okay. Let me see a good one. Okay, so Adam asked about GM bailing. He said, so GM, as I say, they're going to lay off like 15,000 workers or something like that. It's going pretty bad. And
I'll comment on this one.
Sure, go ahead.
It's the unions, dudes.
Well, that's part of it.
No, it goes all the way back to way back. The unions, they signed contracts with Toyota that allowed Toyota to create cars for less money than GM, and that's that's basically been the end of the company ever since. It's the same union. When like Toyota came here and they opened up some factories, they gave them a more favorable contract, and they just created a system where GM could not have the same profit. That's not entirely it, but I'm telling you that's a big part of the picture. Well, that certainly,
I'm sure, is a big part of it. It's also worth noting that this was a company that was bailed out by the government, and then in Obama's re-election campaign they bragged about it. I don't know if you remember, but Joe Biden kept saying Detroit is alive and Osama is dead.
Also, the cars
and that was
suck.
basically their thing. And it's really interesting that he would say that in 2012 Joe Biden's going around saying Detroit is alive and Osama bin Laden is dead. And today, okay, Osama bin Laden might be dead, but we're just as fucking bogged down in those military conflicts as we were. We're still in all those parts of the region. We're still in Afghanistan. We're still in Iraq. and plus a whole bunch of other places where Obama expanded the wars too. And Detroit declared bankruptcy a couple years after that. So it's like, oh yeah, how'd that work out? Like, what's the point of it? If it's a company that was already on its way out and the government bails them out, and so instead of them having to go through bankruptcy or them having to go through a correction in the way their company works, we just bail them out so they can then lay a whole bunch of people off like years later anyway. The other thing that's coming out about this, and I gotta say, of all the stuff in the media where they bash Trump, this one to me does seem to be the most plausible and somewhat fair, is that they're saying that the tariffs that Trump put in really hurt GM, which completely makes sense to me.
Yeah, higher prices on steel cars. Yeah, that makes sense.
You're going to sit there and say like, oh, we put on these like steel or aluminum tariffs, and yeah, this is better for our producers of steel and aluminum here. It's like, yeah, okay, but it's worse for everybody who has to buy steel and aluminum here. So to me, that makes sense too. But
it's funny because GE is also going through some shit right now, but GE and GM are like those very American brands that they used to say if GM goes, like the economy goes. I think that used to be like a popular saying. So that's just one of those emotional companies that people don't like the idea of, oh shit, when it comes to cars, we're not that competitive. It kind of strikes a chord with people.
But this is the stuff that like I really do think like the it's like whether it's forget even the alt-right, because I don't even know really like how relevant that term is. I really don't even know anymore. It's like I think the alt-right, like there's definitely some people on the internet who have, from what I've seen, some medium-sized followings. I don't really think there's any of them who have like huge, ginormous followings, but there's some people with some medium-sized followings out there who are like consider themselves alt-right. I think it was like more of a thing that really suited the left-wing narrative, so it got played up to be this huge thing. But whether it's people on the alt-right or whether it's people on just the populist right, which I do think is a big thing that got Donald Trump elected, it's like, I don't know, man, like they may have some fair like cultural critiques, and they certainly might like have some fair critiques of left-wing craziness. And I, as you guys know who listen to the show, have gotten more and more open to that. Like every inch of it. Like where I've been like, oh, okay, like culture really matters. The left-wing culture is really insane. I'm open to the idea of not bashing religion and realizing like, oh, there's a place for that. And you need to have some normalcy in society. I don't think a society can function if you're just praising everything that's anti-normal. So it's just basically like, oh, anybody who's like married and raising kids is demonized. Anyone who cuts their dick off and puts it on their forehead is now a hero or something like that. Like we have to live in a world where Caitlyn Jenner is Woman of the Year. You know what I mean? Like this fucking ridiculous shit. It's like, okay, I think that's a little bit crazy. That being said, you guys, all of you guys, don't fucking get economics. And you don't, and it's important. And all this fucking protectionist shit, it's fucking just bad economics. It's just terrible. And you know, it's like you're gonna think you're gonna have this strong man who's gonna come save you and bring all the jobs back, but that shit doesn't work. That's not how jobs fucking get created. At least not how any meaningful jobs get created. So it's like it's just one more area where they really are fucking wrong. I'm sorry, you're just wrong. You're not gonna fucking tariff your way into prosperity. It's not gonna happen. And so you know, I wouldn't be surprised if the tariffs do have some negative repercussions. Okay, Kyle asked, this is a really good one. He said, what are your thoughts on the inaccuracies of the political spectrum, such as the far right is both Nazis and libertarians, and we should embrace the political compass, move away from labeling alt-right Nazis as right altogether? Okay, so this is like this thing, and they teach this to people in college and high school too, I think, but it's like the, I believe they call it horseshoe theory. Have you heard that? So the idea is that there's like this political spectrum, and you would have all the way on the left, you would have the communists, and then all the way on the right, you would have the Nazis. And they call it a horseshoe theory because the idea is that the further on the spectrum you get, they kind of start looking like each other again, like they have these similarities, which basically the horseshoe theory, from my understanding of it, is that it's just complete bullshit, and they came up with this horseshoe to justify how it's obviously bullshit to think of the Nazis as extreme right and the commies as extreme left because they're so fucking similar. So then they had to make it a horseshoe to be like, oh, and see, this is why they start looking like each other again. But it's completely ridiculous. Nothing about it makes any sense whatsoever. And in fact, even the Nazis, like the Nazis wouldn't have seen it that way. The commies wouldn't have seen it that way. No, I don't understand how anyone outside of like a modern neoliberal mindset would see the political spectrum that way. So the Nazis, first off, they weren't really in any meaningful sense, from my opinion, a right-wing movement. I mean, yes, you could say that like they didn't share the like egalitarian views of the left, and they were more hierarchical. So they believed in like a hierarchy of races, and that would be something that you don't really see on the left as much. But really, then once they got everybody out of the way and just had like the pure Aryan race, they wanted essentially egalitarianism. So it's like, look, the if you look at the socialists, who are basically like we should have government, state ownership of the means of production, the abolition of private property, and you know, whatever, leading toward a communist society. And then you had the Nazis, which were basically like, we're not going to have the state abolition of private property, but we're going to have a super powerful state that can basically control everything. So even though there is private property, the state can come in and tell you what to do with that private property. They can seize people's property anytime they want to. They're going to be directing production. So really, to me, what's a better political spectrum that would work would be from, on one end, you would have maximum like individual liberty, and on the other end, you would have totalitarianism. And then if you operate within that spectrum, and you look at, on one end would be, say, like, you know, like the complete absence of a state and like no authority, something like an anarchist world. And then on the other end would be like a totalitarian, like North Korea. Everything is run by the state. Now, if you look at things on that end, where would you put the commies? Well, they'd be way over here on the authoritarian end. Where would the Nazis be? Maybe one click over from them? Where would freedom be? All the way over here, right? And where we would be today in a modern society would be somewhere in the middle, like probably closer to the Nazis, to be honest, than to true individual liberty. But then if you look at it that way, you would start looking at our government and being like, oh, we're kind of a fascistic government, which to me is accurate. And so you see right away, there's tremendous benefit if you want to be a ruler, like if you're an oligarch, to this horseshoe theory, because then you get to say, well, so see,
I'm in the middle.
Right, exactly. So if you see where the Nazis and the fucking, because isn't it just common sense to anybody who would look at those societies? Just look at the Nazis in Germany and look at, say, the Soviets. And you'd go, well, they're both crazy authoritarian societies that have so many similar, like, look, even in the Soviet Union, there were a few private farms. They were very small. I think it was like 1 or 2% of them. But there were some private farms, and they would just be subject to basically doing whatever the government told them to do, but they could be privately owned. The Nazis may have had a higher percentage of privately owned business that were all told what to do by the government, but it's really not even that. I mean, this is why they called them National Socialists. They weren't that far off. It was a version of socialism. And of course, they both have so many similar characteristics. I mean, a lot of people refer to Stalin as a fascist because there's so many similar characteristics where once you get into this world, you always have to make the state a religion and you always have to worship the leaders. Because if the state's going to have this much power in everyone's life, the only way to get people on board with it is like you have to worship them. And that's why you see the like Heil Hitler type shit. That's why you saw there were pictures of Stalin. Everyone had to have a picture in their home. It's true in North Korea to this day. Everyone's got to have a picture of the leader, the dear leader, in their home. In China, you'd see these pictures of Mao everywhere. It's like they worship the state. The state runs your life. These are totalitarian governments. So obviously that there's so much similarities there. So if you look at it that way, you'd be like, they're out here on the totalitarian scale, and we want to be far away from that because that's fucking disaster. That's just humans living in slavery. So who the fuck would want to live like that? And you would want to be in a more free area. However, if you want to keep propping up the current fascistic state that we live under, then it's very convenient to label this thing where it's like, well, the commies are way over here. Because think about what you've done now. You've taken this area of the spectrum way out on the totalitarian, authoritarian wing, and you've made that, like, if you zoom into that, you've zoomed into the difference there and said, okay, these are the wings. You got the commies way over here on the left and the Nazis way over here on the right. Let's find this nice sweet spot right in the middle, and that's where good, decent, civilized, modern society comes in.
We're just trying to keep you away from these two other things.
Right, exactly. And be careful, because they start looking an awful lot like each other, you know? But why would that make any sense at all? That these opposites would start looking like each other? Yeah, I mean, that's it to me. So anyway, it's a really good question, because I think it's completely wrong, but it's a very useful type of wrong, where you can then justify everything as like, well, you know, I mean, if you get too far out to one end, you just start looking like the other one. But no, that's not true at all. I mean, there's no question that, like, there have been, just obviously you can look through history where there's been examples where human beings were much freer and examples where they're much less free. And that's, you know, anyway. Okay. Robbie writes, get baptized on air. Commit to being a Christian conservative. I've obviously already been baptized. That's already a thing.
Yeah, I had my circumcision reattached.
Yeah, that's how serious you were. He had to find his foreskin. Still fit. All right. Robert wrote, the FBI labeling Proud Boys as a far-right extremist group and Gavin's exit. Yeah, so I did watch that video. So I guess Gavin quit the Proud Boys. Yeah.
Shit got real.
Yeah, it sure did. What are my thoughts on this? Well, let me say, because I'm almost debating whether or not to say this. I guess I can share this with you guys. Because it was a private, you know, text message that me and Gavin sent back to each other. But this is again where I would just say, one more example of where I really do have to, like, you know, I remember in 2016 when a lot of people, like Gavin was one of them, were trying to convince me that I should just go all in for Trump. And I will admit, there were some compelling aspects to the argument. And the argument was more or less that anything that's anti-Hillary is where you need to be. And this is going to be a very, very bad situation if Hillary Clinton becomes president. And certainly as somebody who is, you know, primarily just anti-war above everything else, and Trump ran a far more anti-war campaign than Hillary did, I saw the appeal. I just saw enough of Trump to know it was going to go like this, and that wars weren't going to really end. Spending wasn't going to get cut. The size of government was just going to grow. Like, it was just, there isn't enough here for me to go on board with this. And then I go, when the disaster of all of this comes back, when these chickens come home to roost, now what do I have? Now I've just basically given up all of my credibility. That's kind of how I felt. So now I'm just associating myself with somebody who might be a fucking disaster. And then the whole point of everything I do is kind of undermined. Because it's like, oh, now it's like, oh, you libertarians loved this guy or whatever. And I just, you know, and then he would say things to me that were just disqualifying. Like, he would start, you know, bragging about we're going to bring back torture and shit like that. And I'd be like, hey, I'm not voting for that guy. Like, I don't care. You know, in the same way that to a lot of, like, left-wing people, when they'd be like, you know, he said something mean about brown people, or he said something mean about transgender people, and they'd be like, that's so offensive, it's outrageous. To me, that torture comment was that for me. Like, that was like, yeah, dude, you don't fucking just for the sake of making yourself the toughest guy in the room, you're going to actually say we're going to start fucking torturing people again. This is something we just did. Like, we've been doing this for quite a while, and it continued under Obama. A lot of people don't know that, but... So anyway, but I remember Gavin making this point at the time, and a lot of other people like him making this point, but it's like, okay, you know what? So like whatever my differences with them would be, Like, I'd be like, well, I'm a libertarian, I believe this, and you believe that. They'd be like, whatever, none of that matters now because Hillary's the one getting in, you know? And it's like, okay, well, that election's over. The midterm elections are over. So now maybe is the appropriate time, even by their own logic, to be like, you know what? Here's where we're fucking different. Like, we're not all exactly on the same page here. And Gavin sent me a text, and I believe it was about a tweet I had sent. So somebody tweeted out that you know, the Obama administration was scandal free, and they said Obama got more scrutiny when he wore a tan blazer than Trump gets when he separates families at the border, or something along those lines. And which, by the way, I don't even, like, literally only people who are Obama supporters would talk about that tan blazer thing or whatever. Nobody else even fucking cared about it. But he wore this awful tan blazer once. But so I tweeted back just at the guy who said that there were no scandals in the Obama administration. I said, Obama murdered American citizens without charges. Is that a scandal for you? Like, that doesn't meet your like threshold of scandal? Like, okay, it does to me. Something along those lines. And Gavin texted me, and he said, which is the way Gavin kind of does it always. He goes, wait, why do we care about Obama killing that Anwar al-Awlaki guy? He goes, he joined Al Qaeda. Good, fucking blow him up. Why the fuck do we care? That's good that Obama did that. And I texted back and forth them, and I was like, dude, no, like, he's an American citizen. He's an American citizen. Rights are not negotiable. I don't care what you like about the guy or what you don't like about him. He gets a lawyer. He gets a trial. He gets a jury of his peers. That's how it works. We don't negotiate on rights. We stand for freedom. He goes, if you don't feel that way, then fine, but you're not for freedom, and that's not the side you're on. And we had a text exchange, something like this, and I just couldn't help but find it ironic that this was just a couple weeks before all this shit went down, where now all of a sudden Gavin and his group have found themselves in the line of sight of the state. And now all of a sudden, now I don't know, I know this has been misreported a little bit. I don't know exactly that they're calling Gavin and the Proud Boys terrorists, but you see when they start to use that type of language toward you now. And I just can't help but be kind of like, yeah, buddy, see, this is why these rights should be non-negotiable. Because see how quickly it can get pointed at you? It's like, oh, yeah. We could fuck people's rights, fuck their right to a trial. We could just kill them. We could just detain them indefinitely. We could just throw them in a fucking hole. Who cares? But we'll only do it if they're terrorists.
You know what I think? Listen, they might have labeled the Proud Boys an extremist group, but what's to stop you from making the Prouder Boys? Get right back out there with a new name.
There you go.
Start the whole thing over again.
Well, look, I don't know what he's going to do.
Don't stop being proud, Gavin.
I got to say, I found...
I can make this group gayer than ever.
I think the whole thing is ridiculous from the beginning. I've always thought the Proud Boys were kind of ridiculous. I like Gavin. I like Gavin a lot. Gavin's the type of guy that is... I think he doesn't like this term or this label, but he is a provocateur. And there's value in people who say a lot of like provocative things when you're living in a crazy world, because they're the ones who are willing to, you know, like, say the crazy truth. And I think a lot of guys like that, like whether it's Gavin or Milo Yiannopoulos or like people like that, it's like I disagree with a lot of what they say, but every now and then they'll really fucking hit something on the head, and they're not afraid to do it. Like, and I admire that quality. I admire people who have courage.
So why is he walking away from his group?
Well, I got to say, it was really unclear to me. It didn't make any sense. I mean, I watched the video, and more or less what he said was that it was to help the legal situation of some of these guys who have been charged. But I just don't understand.
Oh, I can understand
legally
that.
Speaking, how it would help.
No, I can. I'm really talking out of my ass here, but I bet, like, maybe if in court there's this group that's labeled as being an extremist group, maybe it's harder for them to present it if it's no longer active, or if the member in charge that I very
but if
clearly
you were a part of an extremist group and then the group disbanded, it wouldn't make it harder to prosecute.
No, because you disbanded particularly to state that, hey, you were confusing us as something else, and we so don't want to get confused as that, we're actually going to just disband.
Yeah. Well, look, maybe
Listen, that's what the court, like at the end of the day, that's what government, they just want you to roll over.
Yeah.
So sometimes when you stand up and go, hey, you got us, we're rolling over, then the judge go, all right, listen, like we don't have the threat of this group anymore. That's what they're really looking for. Why, to me, why are they going after these guys, not the Antifa people? For some reason, they feel that
that's a fair point.
The white people on the right are more of a threat, and they're like, all right, listen, that violence we'll look away from. This one, we're going to call you extremists, we're going to pull you in, and we're going to show you what we can do.
Yeah, well, look, I did think it was a dangerous thing where the Proud Boys were getting really into the idea that we're going to be the ones who go out and meet Antifa with violence. Yeah. Now, look, I completely believe in somebody's right to self-defense, and I understand if every time you have a gathering, you're being attacked and you're like, fuck it, we're going to fight back. But it's just a dangerous game to play, and you're playing for high stakes, and you better be aware before you just start kind of like working up young guys. You know, it's like I would not do that to my listeners. I would not sit here and be like, yeah, guys, we're going to be the ones who go fight Antifa on the street, because I don't believe that the state criminal justice system is fucking fair. And I wouldn't be surprised if they'll come after people and ruin their lives. And it's just, look, it's just a dangerous fucking game to start playing, man. A really dangerous game. And it seems like a few of these kids who got real worked up, like they saw a few Antifa guys, they got in a street fight. It looked to me, I don't know all the details, but it looked like a stupid situation where people didn't really need to be in a fucking fight. And I get it, you get worked up, you get in this fucking fist fight, and now you're in a really shitty situation. So I feel for all those people involved. It's just, you know, it's just like, look, man, the truth is that the Proud Boys have demonstrated something that I find interesting. I don't have any of this. Like, I know a lot of other people who think like they're so fucking horrible. I don't think anything about the Proud Boys being so horrible. I don't think Gavin's like a fucking bad dude at all. I like him a lot. I think it's crazy for anybody who is actually paying attention to them and would actually listen to anything they have to say. They would go so out of their way to always mention that they're not alt-right, they're not white nationalists, they're not racists at all. They're led by a fucking guy, Gavin, who's married, who's in an interracial marriage with mixed race kids. Gavin's not a guy who's a fucking racist dude. He's never been that, but it just shows you that it's like all that shit means nothing to people on the left. If you're like Richard Spencer or David Duke or Gavin McGinnis, to the people on the left, you're all the exact same fucking thing. It doesn't matter. And for that much, I think we're the same thing with them too. I really do. I mean, I've had people literally say to me that because I had Christopher Cantwell and Richard Spencer on the podcast and basically wasn't shouting at them the whole time, that makes me a white nationalist also. I've actually had people make this argument with me. I had one person who said to me, he said, you know, if you have a conversation with somebody who's a white nationalist, you understand where everybody's going to think you're a white nationalist. And I actually had to say to him, I said, but you realize you're having a conversation with me right now. So by your logic, I think you just caught it. And you're a white nationalist too. Oh my God. I'm sorry to give it to you, buddy.
Spreading.
And then I was like, do you see how dumb this is? You see how dumb this line of thinking is? But it's like, that's where we're at. It's like people just want to fucking believe that. And I don't know. Look, none of us, we're all kind of dealing with this in real time. So I don't know what exactly the right thing is. Like, my thing is like this. It's like, I think you try to avoid these brawls in the street. You try to avoid these physical confrontations. If someone fucking attacks you, meet them with overwhelming force and fucking defend yourself and defend your family, defend people around you. But for all this like street brawls and shit like that, it's like, dude, try to avoid that shit if at all possible. If at all possible. You just, unless you're such a fucking lunkhead that you have no other value to bring to society other than just fighting someone in the street, I just don't think it's a good idea. It was kind of a sad moment to see Gavin kind of, you know, doing this, because I understand he's trying to help his people out. But it's like, you know, he's kind of a guy who like was unapologetic, and to see him borderline apologizing, even though it wasn't really an apology, just was a little bit of a bummer. But I don't really know. I don't have much more thoughts on that. But anyway, we're over time, so we're going to wrap up for today. Anything you want to say?
Yeah, before we wrap up, because I've been seeing in the group for a while, the Ray Crump debate, Ray Crump or Nick Mullen. I think the better starting point on that is you guys are listening to their podcast. If they're saying something you think is totally loony that's kind of worth addressing, send it to us. If we get enough, like right now it's like an esoteric idea of, hey, let's talk to them, but we don't really know what's worth debating them on or what their, loonier ideas are. Or maybe right ideas. Like maybe there's some things that would be interesting to have a conversation with them on. So if they're saying crazy shit, you all have my Facebook. Facebook me like the timestamps. We'll check it out and we can develop content from that. We will. But I think that's the starting point on that.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds good to me. Sure. And I'll tell you, a lot of times, like, I would be interested more to just, like, have a conversation and see where they're coming from, see what we disagree on, what we agree on. I'm sure there's a little bit of both. But yeah, that sounds good to me, Robbie. All right. Listen to Rob's podcast, Run Your Mouth. Follow him on Twitter, @RobbieTheFire. You guys know where to follow me, @ComicDaveSmith. And keep on right here, listening to Part of the Problem and all the other great podcasts here on GasDigitalNetwork.com. All right. Thanks, guys. Peace. All right, guys, thanks for listening to the show. As you know, we have a bunch of amazing podcasts here at GasDigitalNetwork.com. The one we're going to be featuring today is a brand new edition that we're all really excited about. This is so cool. The podcast is the House of Hardcore podcast with Tommy Dreamer. I know it's a big thrill to all of us that they're on the network, so check out a quick clip from them and make sure to check out that podcast as well as all the other great shows here at GasDigitalNetwork.com.
Well, for my entire life, I've always battled with my weight. And I went from being kind of a chunky kid. Yeah, I used to have to go to Sears to buy my jeans, and I used to buy the Husky jeans, the corduroys, with my mom. Very embarrassing. And I've gone from being overweight to super skinny and crying and taking weight gainer because I wanted to be a wrestler so bad and not being able to gain weight, to now being at 47. Well, I have almost hit 300 pounds at one point. I want to do it purposely. I kind of want to do the Homer Simpson, where if I went over 302 pounds, I could collect disability from the government. I have failed at that. So I figured a decent segment would be... Bum, bum, bum. Ladies and gentlemen, what does Tommy Dreamer weigh this week? After dieting from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, until I came home. I dieted Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then I came home on Sunday. And I'm telling you, when I dieted, I had oatmeal and egg whites. I dieted every single day, protein shakes, did cardio. Tipped the scales at 272 pounds. And then it would have been less, but Sunday night I came home and my kids had a Halloween party. And I got home late from my flights and I had 2 black and white cookies, 4 hot dogs, 3 pieces of pizza, some guacamole dip, soup, and what else did I have? Oh, brownies, Rice Krispie treats, and other things. I had a gorging fat fest of my fat cells were in overdrive, and that's kind of how I am because I don't sleep. And this was all late at night. This was at 2 o'clock in the morning. That's the best time to eat, the best time to gain weight. And then, of course, I go in carb overload and I fall asleep. So back to dieting. I want to be 255. So this segment of What Does Tommy Dreamer Weigh this week, I will have fans call in. I will have celebrities call in. I will have people looking at me and try to guess what I weigh. And this week, it's 272 pounds. And just to let you know, I have gained 13 pounds in 1 week. I've also lost 11 pounds in 1 week. So this is a game that is based pure upon my gluttony or based upon my pure fact of being so stupid. Thank you very much.